Well, it's now time for episode 314 of the 3 Point Podcast, presented by the Memorial Healthcare Wellness Center. Guys, you're aware of the show called My 600-Pound Life, right? Have you heard of that? Have you seen any of it at all?
I'm curious where this is going.
Yeah, well, I'll just slide into it because it ties into Memorial. This young man, his name's Tyler, and in 2019, he weighed almost 600 pounds. He was basically fighting for his life in the ICU. After a stay in the hospital, he decided to change his life, and he's lost over 350 pounds. And the tie-in is they moved to Owasso, and now he is very diligent working out at the healthcare center there. And he was part of that Mackinac Bridge Challenge. He got 230 miles in less than a month. So This guy, high praise right there. I mean, when you're pushing 600 pounds and you lose 350 and you keep it going, it just tells you how it works. You got to cut back on the calories and you got to move that body.
So was he on this on 600 My 600-Pound Life? Was he on that show, or you were just using that as?
That was just an example. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So were you? Is this like you were chopping it up in the sauna at Memorial, and that's how you kind of heard this like life story, or?
No. I actually, it was something that Memorial posted, and I thought I'd reshare it here with our listening audience.
Also, I thought I saw that on Facebook too. Yeah, that's incredible dedication by him. That's really cool.
Congratulations. Keep it up, Tyler. Also, our starting lineup of other partners include ALS Association, AZee Branding Solutions, Jacobs Insurance Agency, Kori and Associates Real Estate Services, Nelson House Funeral Homes, Rivals Taphouse and Grille, Success Group Mortgage and Servicing, and Z92.5 The Castle. And we definitely got to give high praise to our sponsors. They help make it possible for us to be here on a weekly basis. Make sure you give them love whenever you're in any of their businesses, and also give us a rating, pass on comments, questions. You can do it via social media at 3Point Pod or email at 3pointpod@gmail.com. We were just kicking it around here before we came on the air about maybe in the summer months, throw a few topics out there. We had one of our listeners last week really wanted us to go into the alien and ghost rabbit hole, and topics like that are fun. I mean, we can definitely, like Jared would say, chop it up for a while and get thoughts out there. So any other topics, just ring us up, right?
Yeah, I mean, we for the most part stick to sports. Obviously, we do have Tedtertainment tonight, so that gets us into pop culture, TV, movies. That's kind of a staple of the show. But we do try to stick to sports. But every once in a while, whether it's aliens, we've dipped our toes into some politics and some other non-sports topics before. And the catch-up segment that has become a pretty big part of the open of the show. We get a lot of feedback on that. So. Yeah, maybe, during these dog days of summer that are coming up, especially with the Tigers not doing so well and stuff like that, maybe we could think about a couple topics to step outside of our comfort zone of football, basketball, baseball.
I guess I don't know what I'm trying to remember our conversation last week. What rabbit hole, I guess what sparked this comment was it?
We just cut it off and said we don't want to go down that rabbit hole, or we could spend the whole hour.
I mean, we danced around it. I mean, it was was it a week or two ago? It was your Ring camera. It was the ghost, and then we were trying to figure out what it was. And I think one of us brought up, was it an alien? And then Ted said he doesn't believe in aliens. And then it went from there.
That's the sticking point, I think, I guess that's like, it's almost more crazy to not believe in aliens than it is to believe in them at this point. I guess maybe to cinch it up, why don't you believe in aliens?
Well, here we go.
So we're going to go down that rabbit hole.
Well, I know, just because I think that's maybe the genesis of, because I think people maybe heard that and said, what? He doesn't believe.
I'll tell you what I believe.
Maybe this is the tease for 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now.
There you go. I'll just give you my one comment on that since you brought it up. I don't think any of these unidentified flying objects are from another world. I think they're like top secret things that our country and other countries are experimenting with. That's my thought.
Right. Do they come from Mars, Jupiter, whatever, or are they just from other countries?
I mean, that's the debate.
Right.
That's the debate.
Yeah. I guess.
So apparently Jared believes it.
Yeah. To an extent, the three of us may never know. You know what I mean? I was going to say no one will ever know. Someone does. But will the general public ever know? I don't know. But I have a feeling, I'd be curious. Maybe this is part of that podcast, if we do something like that, The Sixth Sense had to just absolutely freak out Jared. I have to imagine, if you ever watch it. First of all, that movie's great. It
blew my mind.
One of the craziest like spins, or whatever, twist and turns. When the alien walks across the screen in that one shot, like The Sixth Sense
that was a ghost. Bruce Willis.
Ghost. And I don't know. Maybe I used the wrong word, but
he was dead.
Yeah. I don't think you got, when the dude walks across the
I haven't seen that movie, honestly, ever. I know the
you haven't seen The Sixth Sense.
Dead people. But that was a movie that you kind of was spoiled before you ever even had a chance to watch it, at least in my case. So it was like you already knew the big twist. The whole movie's built around this twist.
Yeah.
So that's one of those that I've never got around to watching. Probably never will.
See, that's the generational thing there. Because I remember when it came out, and then I saw it at the theater that opening week, and the big buzz was, if you go to the movie, don't give away the ending, right? So I didn't know the ending, and it did. It blew me away. It was one of the most well scripted movies I've ever seen. The way that it had the plot twist.
Sixth Sense. Yeah, I got two movies completely mixed up. I was thinking of The Sixth Sense. I See Dead People. Crazy twists and turns. The alien thing I was thinking of was from the movie Signs. The M. Night Shyamalan, that creepy alien guy walks across. It was like the news footage or whatever in the movie. So I was mixing up the two movies. Either way, both of those probably freak out Jared as a kid, maybe even now as an adult. If he watches those, he would need all the lights on. So yes, maybe to wrap this all up, maybe we need to have a podcast with the Tigers not in playoff contention, at least currently, and nothing else really going on in July.
Yeah.
Before high school football starts, before college football starts, maybe we could do a whole podcast on that.
I think we should definitely do it. And maybe I'll even be able to come up with a special guest that's a so-called expert on those types of things.
Sounds like you already have someone in mind.
Yeah, I got sources. Let's put it that way. Hey,
someone that you sit out on Lake Manitou with under the stars, and after a few brewskis, the stories get rolling.
Yeah, no, well, that might be after a gummy or two, but no. We're coming off, guys. We will switch topics just a little bit. We're coming off a big Memorial Day weekend. I mean, you can't say enough about our veterans, what they mean to this country, especially the fallen heroes out there, but it never hurts to reinforce that's the reason we have the 3-day weekend, and you get to celebrate it. It's usually great weather. We had really good weather here for the most part for the weekend. I was on the pontoon, like I told you, listening to Sirius Radio, the top 500 songs of the 1980s. I mean, it's just, there's nothing like it. Plus, I also got to hear the Tigers. Benetti was on the radio and heard that the game you were at, Jared, that the call. I mean, it was incredible. Couple good boat experiences.
This is kind of what I throw out for my catch up. Memorial Day weekend, I worked, 2 of the 4 days, but honestly, that's the start of summer every year is basically what Memorial Day weekend is in my brain. I've never been a big guy to go up north or do that sort of thing, but it was able to take him by basically my second Tigers game in the last probably 12 years of my life. And what an awesome game it was. I mean, 7 home runs. Matt Vierling was the big time hero. Walk-off home run. Literally, the ball looked like it was going to land in my seat.
Really?
I just walk off the left field. I was, basically sitting right underneath the scoreboard when that happened. So it was awesome. Here's always been my complaint. Well, not even always. Recently, I don't know if this is a new thing. I think I talked about it last year when I went to the Tigers game. I cannot get over the amount of noise they pipe into these stadiums, man. Mm-hmm. It's mind-boggling. I think I'm supposed to be the target audience for this. Like, I'm a younger kid, I guess, somewhat younger, 25 years old, on the younger scale of people at that game, probably. I don't get who it's for. The music is never ending. In between each and every single pitch, they pipe in 10 seconds of some TikTok song, faded out. It's mind-numbing. You can't think, you can't talk. I thought the whole point of baseball, similar to golf, is that it's supposed to be this, tranquil, quiet, just enjoying the sights and sounds of the game. The guy yelling out beer, the ball hitting the mitt, the crack of the bat, the crowd cheering for a home run. You don't get any of that. It's this never-ending TikTok scrolling audio. it drives me bonkers. It does. And this is not even just baseball. This isn't even just, Comerica Park. This is every MLB stadium. This is every sport. But to me, I don't mind it at NBA games or even NFL games for that matter. It fits the sport. But baseball, it's like what people bitch about with the Live Golf League with the DJ at the golf events. It just doesn't fit. It drives me nuts. It distracts me. I almost feel like I can't even focus on the game. I tell you what, we're sitting underneath the scoreboard, and if you're not looking at the scoreboard, you have no idea what inning it is. You know the score. You don't know what inning it is. There's nowhere else to look at where you can read it. It's like, is this about the game, or is this about the party going on in the scoreboard in between every pitch? It bothers me. I think that's something that you guys would probably agree with, or at least I know Ted would probably agree with that. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, NBA games, I mean, they'll play music during play, but it's been that way for a long time. NBA games, the entertainment part of it, it's been that way for a really long time. The music and, the cheerleaders going out, obviously baseball doesn't have cheerleaders, and most basketball teams have a mascot that goes out there. They're shooting hot dogs up into the stands and, during timeouts. That's NBA. That's what NBA has been for a really long time. I think it is. And you're starting to creep into, I think you're starting to yell at the clouds a little bit when you step outside. I think it is for the young kids. I mean, we hear about it with baseball all the time, that they've got to start bringing in the younger generation. They got to start bringing in more fans, the younger crowd. And that's the younger crowd, social media, TikTok, dances, so getting famous, trying to get up on the Jumbotron so you can record it on your phone and then post it to TikTok or whatever. That's what it is. And I'm with you, though. I mean, yeah, a little bit during, in between innings. Sure, you got to do something to maybe keep things moving a little bit. But right, in between every pitch, if there's a mound visit doing something crazy, it gets to be too much, because part of going to a baseball game is supposed to be you kick back and eat some Cracker Jacks, eat a hot dog, you have a drink or two, and you just enjoy the game. You enjoy being outside. And when you're just getting music blasted in your ears the whole time, it kind of takes away from the experience a little bit. But I don't know. Things always change. Rules are changing in baseball. I guess the baseball going experience is also changing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely old school. I can't stand it either. I mean, I like to go to a game, watch what's going on, people watch, and then have conversations with my friends that I'm there with.
Right.
I mean, the way they've got it set up, they've just got nonstop noise, and you don't need that in the national pastime. But I'm right with you saying times change and things have changed. And it's unfortunately, you just got to roll with it, or you tune out and watch something else and don't go. But it's just the way I see it.
Do you still, Ted, when you go to a game, do you still bring a scorebook?
I always buy a scorecard.
You don't keep score throughout the game?
No, not usually, because there's bathroom breaks. I can have somebody take it and do it for me while I'm there. But no, I just get it for my little souvenir that I was there that day. One of my quirks.
I tell you what, it's weird watching a game in person. It's almost like you can't even follow the game. I left the game and it was this awesome game, 7 home runs, and I'm like, I almost need to watch the highlights. I don't remember like half of these.
Right.
And you're running around, you're walking through the concourse, takes 30 minutes to get a hot dog. The experience is awesome. And what was awesome about the game I went to on Sunday, 11:30 start. Yeah, you can't beat that. It's like you're out of there by 2:00. You go out to lunch, dinner, and you're still 4:30. You get home, you still have your whole night to do whatever you want. So no complaints with that. And just to clarify, I have no problem with a strikeout. Give me I remember Matt Boyd when he used to have a strikeout, be the Flavor Flav. Yeah, boy, thing that they would pipe in. I love that. You get a home run, give me some audio for that. Strikeouts, all that. I love it. We just don't need it in between every little pitch, man. And you almost notice it more with the pitch clock. It's like, man, they got to fade this music out.
Yeah, right.
And it's like by the time it starts and you register what the song even is, it's off. Right. So just a bummer. I do think it's still an awesome experience. I recommend going to the game. That's just my critique. As I'm getting older, maybe it's like you said, Matt, kind of a realization that the time has passed. I'm now an old man, and it's not for me anymore. I think it's where we're at.
Well, maybe you'll join my strategy. Here I am picturing you going to the game. Maybe you pulled your Bally credentials and got really good seats. You're sitting under the damn scoreboard. I mean, I know there was a big crowd there that day. That's why I kind of pinpoint my games. For the most part, I like to go during midweek, an afternoon game, not a big crowd. I can get a cheap ticket and sit wherever I want. That's what I like.
So we were at the Comerica Landing, which is right in right field, basically the Bud Light porch for a few innings, which is a good spot.
Yeah.
I like the left field seats. I mean, we had 2-3 home run balls hit right in our general direction. You're in the shade. The only I guess I didn't realize how much of a downside it is not being able to see that scoreboard.
Right.
You're missing out on all the fun. And maybe that's part of the reason why I was like overhearing every music, because it's like there's all this fun stuff going on and I don't know what it even is, what's happening. So
you're kind of out of the loop a little bit. Yeah, I've sat in left field a few times at Comerica, and it's been a few years, but you get a lot of home run balls hit your way, but you kind of miss out on a lot of the other stuff. The other part, we've talked about it before. There's other areas at Comerica. That 11:30 start is great. Afternoon, noon, 1 o'clock start is great, unless you're sitting in the sun, and then you're ready to leave by the third or fourth inning because you're already bought 12 waters and you're sweating terribly. But no, going to a game, I mean, it's just, you don't even have to be a baseball fan. You don't even have to like truly know everything about the game or the teams. It's just a fun time.
Yep, it really is. And you did see maybe the best game in the last couple of years. I mean, what an offensive show, and the way it ended, it was great.
And what a great crowd. I mean, I didn't realize how big of a series it is whenever the Blue Jays are in Detroit. 30,000 people at all those games. A lot of about 50-50 Tigers and Blue Jays fans in that crowd. It was cool to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last place team in the AL East comes to Detroit and everyone comes out to watch them. I mean, it's impressive for the Tigers to beat them 3 out of 4, but no, I mean, Toronto's pretty close. I've told people that before down here, like when there's shots of the river and like, oh, look, there's Canada, stuff. They're like, Detroit's that close to Canada?
It is weird.
Yeah, right there.
Right.
If you look at a map, Canada, right there.
Yeah.
By the way, before we move into the prep spotlight, I did want to catch up on one other thing. I posted it on Twitter last week. The Shiawassee Independent is no more. They had their last paper was yesterday on Sunday. Actually, we're recording this on Tuesday night, but the paper was around since the late 70s. I mean, I had a lot of good time with those guys: Leonard Krawcheck, Flores, Bill Constein. Jared's dad, John, was sports editor there for a number of years. And you saw I posted the bumper sticker. Everybody knows about Turf the Murph, but Beat the Brothers was the original.
Beat the Brothers. I don't remember Beat the Brothers. It
was before your time, I think.
Before my time. I definitely remember the Independent showing up and flipping through that a little bit. But that's crazy. To be honest, I didn't even know it was still going. So it's impressive that it was still going. But it's a shame. The newspapers, we've talked about the Argus, whether it's with, different guests that we've had on, local media people, or even just with us. There's something cool about a local paper. And, whether it's sports or whether it's just news stories, stuff that's going on at a school, making the newspaper, there is something really cool about it. And, it's part of the community. So it's a shame that the Independent's going away, but.
Well, I will say this, Jared's dad, I'll have to give him, it's my brother, but I will have to give him some praise. When he went to work at the Independent and did sports, I mean, it was phenomenal. I mean, for a weekly paper, what he had put into it, if you ever go back and see some of these old issues, I mean, they really covered the area sports and other sports big time for a weekly free newspaper. I mean, Casey Smith's dad, Joe, Joe from the radio, he had a column called End of the Bench with the Sports Wannabe. Mike Hazelton had a column, and he follows us on Twitter, Miggy Incognito, but
you just gave us
he's very clever.
That's the whole point of that account. So you don't know
the whole point of the account. Incognito.
I don't care. He won't care either. But I'll tell you, it was really well done in the day. And in fact, that's where John and I went to spring training 2 or 3 different times and gathered tons of interviews. That's where I got my Ernie Harwell voice message. I mean, it's too bad. It's the end of an era. It was a nice publication.
It is. Was it so? It was still just weekly. It was the same deal, same time frame and everything.
Yep. I think they expanded at one time to twice a week. I think they had a Wednesday edition, but it was all supported by their advertisers, and it was a free paper. So it's too bad they're gone. And like we've said before, newspapers in general are dying. Everything's all digital nowadays for the most part.
Yeah, all digital, and you see an article shared on social media or wherever you see it. You click on it and you have to pay. And it's just like, I guess, usually you do pay for a newspaper, but it just makes it hard because sometimes I want to read an article when I'm like, I'm not about to pay for a subscription. So guess I'm not reading that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, anyway, cool. So long, Independent. It's been a nice run, and we'll move on from that. Let's take a short break and come back with the Prep Spotlight presented by Jacobs Insurance Agency. All right, guys, it is the Prep Spotlight presented by Jacobs Insurance, and I don't really have any track because we got this track finals taking place next weekend. We'll have a recap, probably have our last spotlight of the season, but we'll jump into baseball to start it off. Corunna's 9-19 season is now over as the Cavs got no hit, 2-0 by Fowlerville's Griffin Gonzalez. Logan Vall matched him, giving up only 3 hits, striking out 10, but the Cavaliers took it on the chin there, 2-0. Perry, last I checked, they were on a 6-game winning streak after sweeping Carson City Crystal. Mike Werner got his 7th win in Game 1. I don't know if you have anything else to add on Perry right now, Matt.
I haven't. I mean, they started their postseason play tonight, actually Tuesday, but I haven't. I meant to text my family and see if they had an update before we started recording, but I didn't have a chance. So
wonder if it got rained out. That's my guess.
Probably, yeah. It rained pretty hard here around 6 o'clock. In softball, Langsburg, the number 1 team in D3, took on D4 number 8 Beale City, earned a split, winning Game 2, 15-3. Savannah Sturm and Bella Latuzek each had 3 hits in that one. Owasso softballers, they improved to 17-14 after a sweep of Eaton Rapids. Kylie Nesbitt had 5 hits on the day for the Trojans. Little golf news for you guys. This is interesting. Ryan Dahl of Owasso shot a hole-in-one at the Flint Metro tourney, finishing with an 18-hole 81. You guys have golfed a while. Have either one of you had a hole-in-one or come close to a hole-in-one?
Nope. You remember, Jared, did you ever play at Chippewa Hills? Or was that? Yeah. Okay, you remember, I think, it was like number 8 over there. It was like a
90-yard hole.
Yeah, it's the shortest par 3 ever. And I probably told the story or whatever. I worked there for summer in college, cutting greens and doing all that. And they let me golf there for free all summer because I was working there. I would sometimes, like if it was a slow day, grass was caught up, other errands, chores, whatever were caught up on the course, I would just take a pitching wedge over there to that hole and a bucket of balls, and I would just sit there over and over. And then if a group came up, I would step back and let them play, and then I would hit a bunch. Could never get that. I was like, I've got to. One of these times, I've got to get this hole in one. But no, long story short, to answer your question, no.
That hole always cracked me up because it was like they just like ran out of room designing the course. Right. Oh shit, we only got room for 8 holes, so we got to slam. It was like an 80-yard hole with nothing to it, just a green and a tee box. Yep. No fairway, no bunkers, just basically target practice. But it's always good for the end of the round. It's funny you bring up that course. I was just driving on Bennington Road yesterday, and it's weird. Like I can't picture where that course used to be. Yeah, just driving through the hilly Bennington Road, I'm like, this course could have been anywhere on this road. I can't remember exactly where it was. But no, I never had a hole-in-one. Probably never will happen. I think it's is it Xander Schauffele? I think he's like, think about that. He just won PGA Championship. I think he's only had like 2 hole-in-ones in his entire life.
Yeah.
But then there's other players like Tiger Woods. I think he's had like 20 plus.
Well, here we're talking high school golfers, and Owasso's Ryan Dahl, as I mentioned, had a par 3 hole-in-one. How about this? Bloomfield Hills Frosh, Lucas Dostal, he dropped an ace on a par 4, 329-yard hole. That's pretty amazing. Wow. A freshman in high school, a par 4 hole-in-one. That's amazing. Also, I'll finish it up here in soccer. Speaking of amazing, Zadie Smith had a double hat trick with 6 goals in Byron's 8-2 win over Frankel Academy in their district quarterfinal action. I mean, that's putting the biscuit in the basket right there.
6 goals in one game he'd be tired after that.
No kid. But that's it. We're winding down the spring season. That's it for the Prep Spotlight. Again, for all your insurance needs, definitely go see the great folks at Jacobs Insurance Agency. We'll be back and we'll mix it up a little bit in the world of sports right after this. All right, guys, I don't know where you want to start. Anywhere in particular?
Well, I know right now, we'll just talk about it quickly. We've been talking about the NBA playoffs quite a bit. We're recording Tuesday night. The Mavericks and the Timberwolves are playing as we're recording this. The East is already done. The Celtics swept the Pacers. They're in the NBA Finals. The Mavs right now, currently, obviously, as we're recording, up 3-0, potentially going to sweep the Timberwolves. We'll see how this game plays out. But, again, I'm an NBA fan. I love it. I think Mavs Celtics, if that's how it plays out, is going to be a great NBA Finals. But do these, the Celtics basically walked through the Eastern Conference. There's been some pretty good series in the West throughout these playoffs, but overall, are you guys kind of out? A lot of the stars have been hurt. No LeBron, no Steph, no Kevin Durant, nothing like that. Are you guys kind of checked out of these, or are you still kind of watching the games?
Absolutely not. I mean, I think if it gets to the point where it's Dallas against the Celtics, I mean, they got enough stars for me to keep my attention.
Yeah.
And the thing, like I've said before, is when you get to the playoffs, it's not like you, Matt. I mean, you watch these NBA games. You do that for a living, Yeah. I just tune in for the playoffs, and I get to watch guys like, you posted something about Luka should have been maybe MVP. This guy is phenomenal. I'd be a humongous fan of his if he'd stop whining all the time. But man, he can play.
I actually had that written. Do you guys have a problem with Luka's quote unquote whining? It's not whining.
Every play.
That's the game. That's working the refs. That's what you do. He's also from a different country, a different different professional basketball league is where he made his bones. They operate a little differently over in Europe, but that's gamesmanship.
Okay, that's
what
you think.
Refs and clearly there's something to it where that's getting him going, that's motivating him. He plays angry. That's just part of the experience. I got no problem with it. I mean,
I don't care about playing angry. The problem I have is if he never fouls, ever fouls.
Most of the time, he's probably right, especially if he's on the offensive end complaining about something. I mean, he's arguably the best player in the league. You were just throwing out how he could be the MVP.
Yeah,
probably what he's saying most of the time has a pretty good chance of being pretty damn truthful. But a lot of people have your opinion. I understand that I'm in the minority there. Scott Van Pelt, I think, actually came on his show like maybe a week or two ago. And that was like his first opening segment for 3-4 minutes. Podcast, actually, is what I'm thinking of. But how have you not loved this potential Mavericks versus Celtics rivalry? Yes. I was kind of out in the playoffs as we were getting through kind of the second round. But with this Mavericks story and Kyrie's resurgence after what I think we all kind of thought maybe his career was, basically his best moments were behind him. I mean, we've got almost like a Chris Paul Suns type moment where he's got this kind of last hoorah. I mean, look at the Mavericks. They might be here for the next 2-3 years.
Yeah.
With Luka, as long as you got Luka and Kyrie playing the way they are. How they built this team, especially at the trade deadline with a couple of pieces they added, and just how all these role players have really found their fit perfectly. You just got to tip your hat to that team. I think Jason Kidd's done a great job. I think their GM, who's really not ever really even talked about. I wanted to make sure I shouted him out, so I wrote his name down. Nico Harrison. Just a perfect job of not overreacting at the deadline, not overreacting to last year when they didn't even make the playoffs. Just trusting this team, trusting Kyrie and Luka that they're going to figure it out, and they did. Now, the way I view it, the NBA playoffs coming up, or NBA finals, excuse me, it's a win-win scenario for me as a fan. I love Joe Mazzulla. I don't really like much of the Celtics players, but I do love Joe Mazzulla as a coach and all the hate he got, over the last couple of years, taking over for Ime. I think it would be awesome to see him get over that hump and kind of silence all the haters. But at the end of the day, I love the Kyrie story. I love Luka, probably my favorite player in the league right now. So whoever wins that series, I'm going to be rooting for. So.
Yeah, I'm definitely not whoever wins. As a Lakers fan, I cannot stand the Celtics. It would be cool to see Mazzulla. That's a fun story. I don't mind Tatum, they're superstar, but no, I do not want to see the Celtics win another. Even as a Pistons fan, I don't want to see the Celtics win another one. It'll be a good series though, because both those teams have a bunch of superstars, like you guys have already laid out. Luka's playing at the top of his game. Kyrie's playing amazing. That people were out on Kyrie just because of off the court stuff too. He was going through, there was a lot of weird off the court stuff when he was with the Celtics and then with the Nets, and that whole situation fell apart, and he was just not showing up to games for a while. He was just like not even showing up to practice. A lot of weird stuff. But yeah, he's resurrected his career, and yeah, they built a team at the deadline that they added the right pieces, and it just makes you think as a Pistons fan also, like, all right, they got their superstar in Luka. Cool. They drafted him. Then they, added some pieces around him. They were able to get Kyrie in a trade, and then they added the right role players around 2 superstars. Like, why can't the Pistons just hit on something like that? Luka is one of those players, kind of a once in a generation type player, kind of like the Bucks getting Giannis. And obviously, there's other players like that, but because the Mavs, they got Mark Cuban, who can just spend as much money as he wants to spend. But, they're not necessarily like, they're not the Lakers. They're not the Miami Heat or, some of those other teams. Why can't the Pistons just almost fall into something like that? They got Cade Cunningham. You hope that he turns into a superstar. But, Luka, from the day that he came in, you could tell he was going to be a guy. And Cade, it's still kind of back and forth. He's had some injury issues. Are they going to be able to get another superstar like the Mavs were able to get Kyrie? Can the Pistons do the same thing? I don't know, but it happens. It happened with the Bucks, it happened with the Mavericks, or it is happening with the Mavericks. It happened with the Nuggets, when they got Jokic, and then they were able to get Jamal Murray and some other guys. So it's just when I watch some of these teams, it just makes me think, why can't this happen for the Pistons?
Right. Well, it starts. You mentioned the owner of the Mavericks, right? Cuban. I mean, the Pistons. I mean, there's a joke. The guy that owns them. Right. I mean, Bill Davidson, it never would have happened in his days. And, say what you will about the Illiches, but at least they knew what they were doing, right? They had some success. They never won that world championship, but man, they definitely were knocking on the door and they were willing to spend the money. If you don't have good ownership, who then hires the people that make the decisions, you're not going anywhere. Right. That's what I see happening down there in Detroit.
I mean, we've seen the turnaround with the Lions. The Lions, yep. Sheila got involved, or she, runs things now, hired the right people, like you said. Things have turned around. So,
yep.
Yeah, I mean, the NBA, people go back and forth on how much they like it. NBA playoffs, to me, this is high level basketball. If you like the NBA, or if you like, professional basketball, I think it's as good as any out there. And it's kind of the same as what people are starting to say about the WNBA. I don't know if you guys have watched any of Caitlin Clark's Welcome to the League. I'm not going to act like I've watched every minute. I'm not going to say that, but I've tuned in. Of it. Yeah, when I see she's playing, I'll tune in. I've watched a little bit of Angel Reese just because I was curious how she would do. And so Caitlin Clark, she's getting a lot of hate. The Fever, they're not starting off very good. They did finally win a game, so that's good. But you can tell that the other players in the league wanted to send a message to her because, as they should, they shouldn't back down just because she's a superstar, just because she came into the league with all these, accolades and everything. They shouldn't back down. But man, they definitely, you could tell they're stepping their game up when she's playing because they're setting hard screens and they're playing different against Caitlin Clark. But she's a rookie too. And I saw someone, I think it was Ant Wright, actually, former guest, big Twitter person out there, posted the Fever, Indiana, so Caitlin Clark's team, their schedule compared to the defending champ, the Las Vegas Aces. The Fever have been playing every other night since the season started. The WNBA clearly is trying to maximize on this Caitlin Clark thing, whereas the Aces, they played a game, then they had 3 or 4 nights off, played a game, 3 or 4 nights off. So it's like, not only is Caitlin Clark coming straight from college basketball, where she made a run, to the championship game, had what? I think, Jared, you talked about it. She had like a month off, basically, and then straight into the WNBA. But now she's playing every other night because they're trying to maximize on these TV, the viewership. So it was almost like, and she got drafted by the worst team in the league, of course, the number one pick. So it was almost like she was set up to fail maybe a little bit.
Fever are horrible. Man, they're horrible. I have been watching, actually, like any chance I've been able to get, I've been tuning in. Honestly, it's been a more entertaining regular season than the NBA seemingly had in years. To me, it's at least from a storyline perspective. Caitlin Clark, it's exactly what you said. A lot of unnecessary hate. I mean, do I get the jealousy? For sure. I mean, if you're like Diana Taurasi or whoever, you win all these titles. You've been playing for 20-year career, and then it's like almost like Caitlin Clark, without even stepping foot in the WNBA, it's like accomplished more for this sport than you ever did. It's like, I get why there's some hatred, and it definitely would annoy me if I'm a player. But you also, it's like sometimes you're like, dude, just look in think about what's going on here. You didn't have charter flights until she came to leave. Think of all how she is raising your profile. Angel Reese, nobody would know who the hell she was if the whole Caitlin Clark story doesn't happen. Now she's a big time star. A lot of these other players are becoming big time stars because of Caitlin Clark So it's stupid, it's petty, and it's making you root very hard for the Indiana Fever. Unfortunately, I just think it's a freaking atrocious team that has a lot to figure out with a ball-centric, heliocentric type guard like Caitlin Clark. I don't think you can just throw her in and tell her to, like, go crazy. It's like, I think give her a couple years where she can kind of establish herself as the alpha. I know there's like Aaliyah Boston's also there. I think she's going to be a tad overrated with how they're acting like it's a 1-2 punch. It's like, no, give it a few years. Caitlin Clark's going to separate herself from the rest of this roster. They're going to basically just play around her. And so I think just wait until then. But for now, it's definitely not looking great. I'll be the first to admit that.
That again is where you got to have good management, because you don't want it to end up like the whole, and this is before your guys' time, but you know the story, Pistol Pete. He never was really successful in the NBA as far as winning championships. I think he got one with the Celtics when he was on his very last legs, but they never put the players around him, and that's what Caitlin Clark needs as well. She's the focal point, she's the ball handler, she makes it all happen, and if they can build a team around her, which it'll take time, I think it will happen. I did want to bring up one thing, Matt, and Jared, actually. You're talking about playing the music at games. They don't play music during NBA actual play, do they? They do in the WNBA. I know. I noticed that.
They play the whole defense chant every time the home team is on defense.
Okay. Well, I did notice in the WNBA, I mean, they were playing like rap music and stuff while play was going on. I thought that's kind of a bit much.
I'm not sure, like, depending on where they played, I mean, they're not playing in exactly the some of the games are not at, Crypto Arena or wherever. Right. So maybe the sound system isn't quite as good where you're picking it up a little bit more on TV, but
maybe
no, that's NBA, that's WNBA. I feel like the NBA was the first adopter of the in-game music, side shows on the scoreboard. So that's forever been a thing.
Okay.
Yeah. I think WNBA does it a little more because, again, trying to keep the fans engaged and trying to get more people there, trying to make the games a party, essentially. Yeah. So, but yeah, the NBA does it too, just maybe not to that extent. Like you said, full on concerts during the game.
Exactly. Before we move off basketball, definitely got to pass it out there that condolences, and he'll be missed. Bill Walton, legendary Bill Walton, not only as a basketball player, but a broadcaster. Got a lot of great kudos the last couple of days. Well deserved. I mean, he was one of a kind, man. There's no doubt about it. He'll definitely be missed.
Yeah, there's been a lot of very, very cool tributes going on today on whatever shows or whatever you listen to and watch. A lot of people giving their stories and, like I said, tributes to him because, he obviously, I don't remember him much as a player. I mean, obviously in college I wasn't around. I feel like I remember seeing some stuff when he was, on the back end of his career with the Celtics. But I mean, you hear the stories about maybe the best college basketball player ever, if not maybe number 2. And I'd be curious, Ted, I mean, you always say Pistol Pete, but would you say Bill Walton is definitely right there?
Absolutely. Top 3. I think it's Maravich, Alcindor, or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Bill Walton. Bill Walton, I had a special spot in my heart, man. Watching him play, he was playing for UCLA right when I was in my cream of the crop high school days, right? So and you got to see UCLA more than any other team back in those days, and seeing that 21 out of 22 shooting performance, think about that. I mean, he was as good as it gets, and then he gets drafted number 1 by Portland. He was phenomenal for the Trailblazers, led them to an NBA championship, and unfortunately, it's been well documented that he had some of the most horrific injuries, to his legs and his feet, and he could barely walk or stand. I mean, the guy, if he would have been healthy, he would have been an all-time great NBA player. He's still in the Hall of Fame, with mostly what he did in college, but he was one of the best I ever saw for sure in college.
Yeah, the stories have been cool. I mean, I have just a small story. I worked a few games with him where he was on the call, and the producers always before the game would always not necessarily like a warning, not in a bad way, but always be like, all right, we'd go over everything for the game. And one of the things would always be Bill Walton's on the call. So just be prepared for anything. We have no idea basically where this is going to go. So just be prepared for anything. I remember one specifically, I tweeted this out, but one specifically, it was during COVID times when the analysts were still from home. and we did a game. He was at his house. He had his camera just set up in his living room. Some people would maybe try and set up an office or a man cave like what Ted has going on there, but he just had his set up in the living room. His wife was walking around in the background doing her thing. Her wife, I don't know, significant other. I'm not sure his story there, I guess, but she was just back there doing her thing, and he was blaring Grateful Dead before the game while we're faxing out, trying to check his mics, make sure his camera's working, and all that. Blaring Grateful, but he was so nice, made sure his mics worked, made sure he was doing everything. He kept asking, like, everything good, everything, he wasn't a prima donna by any means, just super friendly, super professional, and made the productions always fun. So, I mean, that's my one little story of working with them. A really cool experience there. One I wanted to, so I was watching Get Up this morning, and Mike Greenberg, he shared a couple. And I remember Bill Walton would be on Mike and Mike all the time. And he did end up saying it was basically a weekly segment. They'd have Bill Walton on. And I remember this. It's funny they brought the video back. They did a Mike and Mike wedding where someone got married at ESPN, like right on campus in the studio where Mike and Mike was. And it's funny. I was like, I remember that. But Greenberg said that when they had Bill Walton on that week, they told him about it. They were like, yeah, we're Mike and Mike the wedding. We're doing that. And Bill Walton was just like, that sounds really cool. I'm going to be in town, when that's happening. So I'm going to come. And they played the video, and Bill Walton's like in the studio at this person's wedding. And they were just like, how crazy is that? One, you're getting to do a wedding at ESPN on Mike and Mike. And then Bill Walton is standing there in the crowd, just with your family and friends that you invited to it. So he just seems like the ultimate, like, lived life to its fullest. I mean,
absolutely.
Everyone has already gave much better tributes than I can give, but yeah, one of those sad ones to hear about.
He was a classic without a doubt. You brought up Mike Greenberg, and the hot topic, or one of the hot topics this last week, was sports media members wearing their colors. You guys got some thoughts on that?
I'd be curious where we all stand, because I think this is definitely a generational type of thing. It's definitely changed. Greenberg being one of the big ones, does not hide his Jets fandom at all on his show. And before I give my thought, I'm curious what you guys think. I have a feeling, maybe not. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I'll jump in, because Jared, I'm sure, will jump on whatever thought I have anyway. As far as a national broadcaster, I understand Greeny's a Jet fan, but it's a bit much to me. A bit, he's got to do his professional job. I don't give a damn if he's a Jets fan. Now, Kurt Herbstreit, on the other hand, he's a Buckeye, right? But you never would know it when he's doing a broadcast. He seems to be pretty straight down the middle. Everybody has their favorite teams, but I just don't think it belongs personally in a top of the line professional setting myself. I mean, Greeny can make a comment or two about it. That's fine, but it's overboard to me. That's just my thought on that.
Yeah, I guess you were right. I'm gonna be what exactly was the verbiage you use? I'm gonna shit on anything you say or something.
Pretty much.
No, unless you're a national play-by-play guy like a Joe Buck, like you said, Herbstreit. No, nobody wants to listen to a Michigan Ohio State game where Herbstreit's just loving everything Ohio State's doing. Right. No, Mike Greenberg, that's like the best segments every week. He just went on Pat McAfee's show a week or two ago, and it was over the New York Knicks. I was blanking. Like, why would they be talking about the Jets? The New York Knicks, when the Pacers knocked them out of the playoffs. It's like a great segment. Pat McAfee's an Indiana Pacers fan. Mike Greenberg is a Jets fan. That's like awesome. And the Jets are such a hot topic now with Aaron Rodgers. Like, Greeny is the Jets guy. That, like, if a big thing happens with the Jets and Greeny's not giving you his thoughts on it, you're like, what's wrong with Greeny? That's what you go to Greeny for, almost. Outside of, obviously, Get Up's a great show and he's a great host. And Mike and Mike way back in the day. That's who he is. I remember Michael Wilbon, and I thought this was almost like bizarre. It's like, who thinks this way? This is like the old 1940s like thinking. Michael Wilbon, I remember like 2016, the Chicago Cubs were having that miraculous run. And they won the World Series, and like he went to a game as a fan, and I think it was when they won the World Series. And the producer of, I don't know what it would have been, SportsCenter at night or whatever the segment would have been, basically like wanted him to come on the show. And Wilbon had a back and forth. Basically, was like, I'm a fan. I'm wearing a Cubs jersey. I'm wearing an Ernie Banks jersey. Like, I can't do that. Like, that's not what the fans want. It's like, no, actually, the fans do want to hear your perspective as a Cubs fan. keep the Ernie Banks jersey on. Like, let's come to you. Let's do a segment. And like, what ended up being great. Everybody wants that. I'm shocked to actually hear you say that, Ted, that you don't like that. I mean, for Greeny, talk show host, like what?
You're actually talking me into maybe rethinking a little bit. There is a difference between a national broadcast doing the play-by-play in color of an actual game, which I give Herb Street credit, but I kind of get what you're saying. Being a talk show host, it's probably is. Maybe I was a little bit too harsh on that. So I'll change my mind a little bit on that. You talked me out of it.
All right.
I think it's definitely one of those things where there can be extremes because, again, this isn't national, but like people listening to the Corona football run to Ford Field,
right?
Ted Fattel, there's no one else you want to hear calling that game because of your love and everything for Golden Alumni for Corona. I mean, so that's perfect. You're not gonna be unfair. You're still gonna call a professional or a good game, but everyone knows you're a Corona guy, and so that's who you want to hear call those games. But right, when it's the big noon game on Fox, Michigan, Ohio State, yes, everyone knows Gus Johnson has his ties to Michigan, and Joel Klatt, loved Jim Harbaugh and everything. But they still, at least to me, were pretty down the middle. I mean, they wouldn't lean Michigan. Obviously, when Michigan was winning, they're going to, obviously call the game in the manner that they do because Michigan's dominating whoever they're playing. But I think there's an extreme either way. The one way that Greeny maybe sometimes might show it a little bit, and I've talked to some people who work on the show, he makes sure the Jets get in every A segment of the show. And sometimes that's where it's like, all right, after the Aaron Rodgers injury, when they're clearly out of the playoffs, maybe that's where we don't need to talk about the Jets anymore. Let's maybe talk about the Lions because the Lions are making a run. That's maybe where it can like affect things where it's like, all right, we know you're a Jets fan, but we've got nothing to talk about. Zach Wilson is doing nothing for this show right now. So that's maybe where it could.
But also, and I think we can relate to this, is like our best segments are when we're talking Detroit Lions, Michigan football.
Right.
Like, when we talk about NBA playoffs, it's a happening thing, man. It's like if your heart's not really into it, we are somewhat, but if you care about something, that's what makes the content good. Yeah. So you want to hear Greeny talk about the Jets because him going crazy about the Jets is better than talk about Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs for the 10th time.
Yeah.
Right.
That's I love hearing about it. You want guys who care, and that's why it's always fun. Like hearing Barstool has like the Chicago offices. Like when they talk about Bears content, like when something bad happens to the Bears, you go to them and you watch it.
Yeah.
So I have no problem with it at all. I think it's outdated thinking. Whatever guys like, whatever they're a fan of, that's what we want to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I remember thinking that too, like when starting at ESPN, when people we were told that. We were told, yeah, we know we're all fans, but we don't want you to wear, we had to dress like semi-formal or whatever. Everything, you had to have a collar every day. And part of it was like, you don't want to wear fan clothes because if you end up, some of the sets, you could end up on TV. And they're like, we don't want you showing up on TV with a Tigers logo on because then people might be like, oh, ESPN's biased towards the Tigers. And I understood that, but I also thought, I think most people probably get that a lot of the people who work at ESPN are sports fans. Like, so it's okay. Right. If you got a job at ESPN as a, Sports Center anchor, you probably had some sort of sports affiliation at some point in your life. So yes, as long as you don't let that like influence how you report on things, I'm kind of with you, Jared. It is like if Mike Wilbon, when the Cubs are winning the World Series, I want to hear what he thinks about it.
Yeah.
Scott Van Pelt, Maryland guy. If Maryland ever won national title, I'd want to hear Scott Van Pelt about Maryland.
Yep. No, that makes sense. And, and you got to just definitely break it into different categories. I mean, you brought up the high school broadcasting. It's the same way college broadcast. If you're a Michigan football broadcaster, I go all the way back to you for, my God, you're rooting for that team. That's definitely that goes along with every college program out there. They're all homers. I mean, you listen to Sirius satellite radio when you're on the road, and sometimes I'll tune into like the Buckeye broadcasters. I mean, they're so homer, it's unbelievable, just like every other college. So I'm all good with that. And again, I think I've come around to your guys' way of thinking here that it's okay to have some fandom, but it can go overboard. That's the only comment I'll make there.
Yeah, like with anything, there's extremes always. There's extremes, and sometimes it's taken that way. But I'm also on the side of like, I don't understand why. I think I've probably said this on here before. Unless you're reporting on the presidential election or an obituary, I don't understand why people on TV, whether it's sports or news, have to be in like full on tuxedo suits and all that. Like sometimes I'm like, we're just talking about sports, or when you see people. The local news reporter that's out at like a cat fashion show or something like that, and they're still in like a suit reporting the news. It's like, all right, what are we doing here? Like we're taking this a little too serious. But
yeah, do we agree that at the national level we don't want to see cheerleaders? Like, you watch somebody like Reggie Miller doing a Pacer game, he's not flat out rooting for the Pacers while he's doing his color commentary. And there's all other former players that are part of broadcast. They don't really blatantly put it out there, which I think is probably a good practice, because you're talking to the other team's fans too.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. Okay. Again, but like if the Pacers won the title, I would expect Reggie Miller to be out excited on the floor hugging everyone and stuff like that. So
I'd be okay with that. All right, that's enough of basketball, I guess, and that topic, unless you guys got anything else you want to add. I did want to throw up one thing in baseball. The Tigers, Jared, you went to the game. They're right around 500. They're still like 9.5 games back. They're going to be fighting for their lives to try and get a last wild card spot. There's still a chance, but they've got to get a few things turned around. But the big story in baseball, I got a little side story with this. Angel Hernandez finally gone as an MLB umpire. Frankly, from all the things I've seen on social media, he's got to be the worst umpire of all time. I mean,
ever.
It's ridiculous. And I was actually at a game, the Tigers, at Tampa Bay a couple years ago. And, there's all of 5,000 or 6,000 fans in the stands. And I'm sitting right behind the first base dugout. And this Tampa Bay fan was relentless in his taunting of Hernandez, just relentless. So much so, Hernandez actually kind of got a chuckle out of it and acknowledged the guy and was talking to him in the stands. So that was my firsthand experience with the guy. You hate to see a guy lose his job. Technically, he retired, but definitely that's where the union sometimes protects players or umpires that they shouldn't have protection. He should never have held his job as long as he did.
I'm just glad I don't got to hear about it anymore. Dude, if you like watch games, like it's like almost you don't even realize like that he was umping them. Yeah, he's not the best. Those guys are all so good where it's like you missed one little strike call. It's 2 inches outside the strike zone, and guys on Twitter are clipping it and saying how horrible. It was impressive how long he lasted. Yes. Being the center of the media hatred. Again, I think it's just bizarre. There's a lot more things to hate on, specific players, enemy teams, than an umpire. It's like, who gives a shit about this? But a lot of people did. And it's a big time story that he got let go, basically forcefully resigned. It just was always weird to me, and I'm glad I don't got to hear about it anymore. It's a goddamn umpire. He's not great. He definitely was bad. And some of the videos you would see, it's like, holy shit, how does this guy have a job? Let alone how is he doing playoff games sometimes? But also, it's just like, why is it like it really bothers these baseball fans that this one umpire is like not perfect? It's like, who gives a flying F? But whatever, it's gone. They got their way, and now we can just move on from it. It is where I'm at with it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, my point on that is it's a profession. He's a professional. He was awful at it.
He was bad.
I'm not trying to like. Again, a lot of people were like celebrating and cheering this guy getting fired. I just thought it was like maybe it was kind of the inside joke of it all. It's like, let's just hammer this umpire, and like it maybe got a life of its own on Twitter. But it just at the end of the day, it's an umpire. I feel bad for him. It's like, it's a tough job, man.
Don't feel too bad. He has his pension. He'll do fine. He's 62.
I'm sure he's doing fine. I think one thing I can see where you're coming from, Jared. He like when they started tracking, balls and strikes, missed calls, all that. He like blew everyone out of the water with how many calls that he missed. I mean, he really was bad. Now, he's also got a lot correct, So, yeah, they call enough balls and strikes where if you miss a few, it stands out. But, he was so bad. It was like Ted said, like how did he hang on so long doing playoff games? He doing high profile games. Amazing. And he seemed like one we were talking about, media personalities letting their their fandom affect what they do. He seemed to be one that if he didn't like a player, he would call balls and strikes. He would let that affect how he called balls and strikes. Or if he didn't like a manager, he would start the strike zone all of a sudden would get this big. That's where it was like, all right, yes, you're a human, so your emotion is going to come into play, but you're also supposed to be a professional. And that's where sometimes, or he would throw guys out just because he didn't like them and stuff. That's where it was kind of like getting ridiculous. But
I guess maybe I'm like, I have no problem with the fact that this guy should have been fired. I'm with you. It's like, what took the MLB so long? Once the media hellstorm started, which was probably years after it had been realized this guy's just not a good umpire. Like what took so long? Like you said, maybe it's union protecting his job. I don't effing know. But whatever. I just wonder. It was weird. The timing was weird. Mid-season, all of a sudden you're done, and there wasn't like some big, domino, big missed call. You missed the end of a game, as far as I know. So I just thought it was kind of bizarre, the timing.
Yeah, I don't think it didn't have anything to do with his pension and his retirement because he's 62. I'm sure there was conversations with the higher ups in baseball and him, and they came to a mutual agreement because he probably did have enough of it and they've had enough of it. I mean, you don't want your product, which is part of your product, the umpires, every single day there's something on the social media pages with him blowing calls. It's not good for MLB. So I think it was a good parting of the ways. All right, guys, let's take another short break and let's get into a little special entertainment tonight. We're going to talk a little music and musicians right after this. All right, guys, Matt, this week you'd sent us a note on something. How about maybe talking about crossover musicians? And I think that's a great topic because it's been going on for a while now, but I'm sure we have thoughts on musicians going from one genre to another. Anybody want to start this convo out?
Yeah, so it kind of came. I started thinking about it because Jared, I'm sure you're well aware, and Ted, you probably too, because you've talked about that. You like Post Malone. But he's going to be releasing a country album here pretty soon, and he's been like teasing things. He put out a song with Morgan Wallen, and he's been like posting little clips here and there, and it's working on me because anytime I see him post this little like teaser, I'm like, come on. So yeah, he's going to be releasing a country album. Recently, Beyonce released a country album, and people were back and forth on that. Honestly, I haven't listened to much of it. I listened to the one song that's been on the radio. Otherwise, I haven't heard anything else off of it. And and it's been a big topic. People, you're not a country artist. Why are you trying to make a country album? Stay in your lane type of stuff. Or why are you trying to? Beyonce obviously very successful over in the R&B world. Why are you trying to come into our country world? So people are saying the same about Post Malone. I remember when I worked at FYE when Taylor Swift came out, FYE, music store at the mall back in the day. No one knew who Taylor Swift was. But when she came out, kind of pop country. And I remember people at the store would get so mad because her albums were in the country section. She's not a country artist. Why is she in the country section? She's not, like all these people. And I just remember thinking like, why do you care? Like, first of all, like, why do you care so much? But also like, she's an artist. So let her make whatever music she wants to make. So I'm curious. I just thought it'd be an interesting conversation.
Well, I'll jump in real quick on Taylor Swift. It's interesting that hearing your perspective on it, because my viewpoint was, I remember seeing her when she was like 15 years old, with the acoustic guitar. And I thought she was at that time country. That's what I thought. I thought she moved from basically country into pop and pop stardom, superstardom. But I guess I didn't hear that first part when she first started out. She was getting some grief from country fans, huh?
Yeah, I mean, she was definitely more country than she is now. But the old school, traditional Hank Williams type of country fans thought she was still like too poppy to be in the country section. Yeah. But yeah, she has definitely went full on pop obviously now.
Well, before Jared jumps in, I'll comment real quickly on Beyonce. I heard some of her songs. I don't really care if she sings country or not. It didn't blow me away. Let's put it that way. Right. But I am really looking forward to Post Malone. I think he's going to knock it out of the park. Without even hearing anything. I think it's going to be great.
Have you heard the one song with Morgan Wallen?
I have heard that one song. Yeah. That's really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Posty's your guy, right, Jared? So are you excited?
Yeah, it's gonna be a great album. He almost fits country
Yeah.
perfectly. I mean, he's from Texas, so it's a
His
perfect
voice.
fit. First song with Morgan Wallen's a great song. I can't wait to hear it. It's gonna be great. Here's where I'm at with it. I think it's for artists. It goes one or two ways. Either it's like a start of a brand new career that propels you into a whole nother level of stardom, like we see with country artists going to pop, like you said, Taylor Swift and Miley Cyrus started as country, somewhat. I think you would categorize, and she's obviously moved to pop now, more rock than anything. So I think it's cool when you see artists, kind of transition in to different genres. It shows that they're growing, not just churning out the same crap. Now again, it can go bad. I remember Zach Brown Band album that came out 3-4 years ago that was kind of more like EDM pop. It's like horrible. It's like almost like ruins like all the stuff they put out before that. Beyonce's album, I think it's bad. I think that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's like where it goes one or two ways. Like music quite hasn't really been popping the same way it was, early 2010s. Makes this kind of left turn. I'm sure she has a crazy fan base, so I'm sure it's popular. I'm sure it's doing well in that like somewhat echo chamber, but I don't think it's that good. I didn't think that was a good move. I didn't think it was that good of an album. It just didn't work, in my opinion. Now, other times there's been times where it's mixed opinions. Like Lil Wayne, I remember like 2008, like his album Rebirth. If you ask a lot of Lil Wayne fans, they're like, this is an abomination. This is the worst thing I've ever heard. I like that album. I think it's got a few good songs on it. So it varies by artist, but I think for me, I got no problem with it. At the end of the day, good music is good music. So if you can make good music, it's like, go do it in whatever genre you want to. But if you ever overstep your bounds in that way, I think it's a quick way to kind of send your career really down the hill.
Yeah, I always think of it as like actors. You wouldn't expect Jim Carrey to only do comedy movies his whole career. You wouldn't expect, some of these other actors to only do serious movies their whole career. They're going to do, Jeff Daniels. I've seen some clips recently on TikTok or, whatever social media of Jeff Daniels talking about he was not a comedic actor when he got the role to do Dumb and Dumber with Jim Carrey. And think about that. I mean, that legendary role for him, doing Dumb and Dumber with Jim Carrey. So would you not want actors to ever cross over into other genres? And yeah, like you said, Jared, sometimes it doesn't go well if certain actors try and do a serious movie or go the other way, do a comedy. It's kind of like, this doesn't really work for you, but still, you don't hate on them for doing it. So I've never had a problem with that. I remember, in the 90s, early 2000s, artists trying to cross over and maybe do different kind of music. And I just always, artists that I was a fan of, you listen to it, and if it's not your song, whatever, you stick to the stuff that you like. But everything's subjective. I always laugh when, there's, like you said, there's probably people who love that Beyonce country album. That's fine. Then listen to it. If you love it, listen to it. But did that happen much back in, the day? I mean, you're obviously big music fan, Ted, and, through the 60s, 70s. And did it happen that much? Did classic rock people do like, softer music or something?
Yeah, once in a while. I mean, it maybe not as far back as my heyday, but like guys like Darius Rucker. I mean, he moved into country flawlessly. Why was he not ever 100% country singer? I mean, he's awesome at it. But back in the day, there were guys like Kenny Rogers. He started out in pop, then went full time into country. Glenn Campbell the same way. Linda Ronstadt. There's others, obviously. Ray Charles. But I was going to ask you guys, is there a couple songs maybe that you would pinpoint that maybe are your favorites that crossed over into whatever genre? I mean, I know, Jared, you texted us Aerosmith. You're talking about the Aerosmith Run DMC, Walk This Way.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I figured that's probably number one on your list. That's like, I feel like the number one song that people throw out, like how that was so,
perfect,
changing or not changing, but like it was a cultural moment. It's funny listen back. It's like this song, I don't get it. It's a solid song, but good Lord, I don't think it's that revolutionary what they did on it.
It's probably less about the song, more about Aerosmith and Run DMC getting together. That's probably more what it was about.
Yeah,
and the visual on MTV at the time too, right? I would say I talked about Bon Jovi a couple weeks ago. John Bon Jovi recorded "Who Says You Can't Go Home" with Jennifer Nettles. That was just a clutch country tune, man. That he just knocked it out of the park.
That's a good one. I mean, Taylor Swift, you could throw out her whole catalog and be a big Taylor
Right.
Swift fan. I mean, that's her whole thing is basically a change. I mean, I threw out Lil Wayne's Rebirth album. Again, that's very controversial. I would say most people would say that's just maybe the worst piece of musical content that's ever been produced, but I like it. So that's kind of there's a few songs that I like on that album. So those are my two options: Taylor Swift and Lil Wayne's got a few of them.
Yeah, I know. Like Nelly was big. The rap artist Nelly. He was big. When I was in high school and then in college was definitely his peak, and he crossed over quite a bit. He did R&B. He linked up with Tim McGraw and some other country artists, and he was one that definitely dipped into doing rap, R&B, doing some country and stuff, and people would rip on him all the time. But same thing, I was a fan. I like Nelly, so I like all those songs. Did I listen to some of those ones as much as like the classic hits? Maybe not, but it's cool. I'm not going to hate on someone for trying it. So I'm definitely. Yeah, am I gonna download the whole Beyonce country album? Probably not. But Post Malone, I mean, immediately when that all comes out, I'm gonna be downloading that, and it goes back to the Super Bowl halftime shows or the halftime shows that we talk about. You got to think Post Malone's got to be up there on the list anyway for one of these big halftime shows at some point.
We can only hope.
He's number one on my list, man, behind Taylor Swift. So
yeah, amen. One other one that I didn't bring up was Kid Rock. He had a pretty good segue from his music into country. Yeah. Not a big fan of Kid Rock.
All summer long, you can't beat that. All time,
right? Exactly. And he sang with Sheryl Crow. "Picture" was a pretty good song too.
Yeah, I can't believe I used to be such a Kid Rock fan. Thinking about the left turn that I can't say left turn, the right turn that he's taken. Like, but yeah, he did. He was rock. And then did do the country album. So he did that.
I think his best music is his country music. I think his other music is horrendous. I never understood it.
That's definitely a generational thing too, because I mean it was so big because he was like rock / rap. And that was such a big thing. Like Linkin Park was a big deal. Limp Bizkit was a big deal back then. So like there weren't necessarily maybe a ton of artists that like crossed over, but they did the same thing. They were hard rock, but they were rapping during those songs. Or like Linkin Park had a dude that would scream, Chester Bennington, but then they also had someone that would rap during the song. Yeah. So that was a big thing. Right. So
it's funny you brought up Kid Rock, because I think he had a lot more fans before he turned really political, depending on whatever your beliefs are. But yeah, I think that probably hurt him because he's lost a lot of his fans. Where if you're non-political and you're in this business or that business, whatever, you're going to keep a lot more of your fans. There's just no getting around it.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, you brought up, by the way, do we have any more on the music topic? I did have a couple of shows I watched recently, and you brought up Jeff Daniels. I watched his new series on Netflix called A Man in Full. I just got to say, it's about a real estate mogul he plays, and he has this Southern accent that it's okay, but he doesn't really pull it off. This is one of those shows I'm really surprised. I'm going to say I did not care for it. I'm usually one of Jeff Daniels' biggest fans, but it's not any good.
As you were leading into this, I was going to say you would never say a negative word about anything Jeff Daniels related. Your credibility is back after Unfrosted.
Thank you.
We can trust your opinions now. I'm with you. I know it must have been really bad because you're a Jeff Daniels fan through and through. Yeah, that got to be the first thing he's ever produced or been a part of that you didn't like.
It's very rare. He's one of those guys. I'm going to buy my popcorn to see what he's in for sure. And it was just disjointed. It had a pretty good cast. It just didn't click on the 3-point podcast scale. He's lucky to get a 2.0. That's the way I see it. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that because I've seen it and same thing. I like most everything of what Jeff Daniels does. We haven't watched it, but with that review, I think that's going to be put on the back burner for a while.
Yeah, that's my recommendation on that. And then I did, how I like my music documentaries. The Beach Boys just had a new one come out on Disney Plus. Very good. There was some things about the Beach Boys I didn't realize. I mean, they started out their first 3 or 4 albums. One of the longtime members wasn't a part of it. They had some young kid that was the 5th Beach Boy at that time that he just decided he was going to exit the band. They were going to bring Al Jardine back in, and the rest was history. But they had some tidbits in there that I didn't know, and I was pretty good Beach Boys fan, so it's worth the watch on Disney Plus.
It's ironic you bring up the Beach Boys. I was just seeing some on Twitter about them performing. I don't know how old are they?
They're old. They're old. I mean,
and you listen to their songs, it sounds like little schoolboys singing. How are they even performing?
They're probably lip syncing most of that.
No, I don't think they're lip. I don't think they're lip syncing. I think Mike Love, the lead singer. I still think he's the guy that sings. But you got to realize, Jared, when these old dogs are on tour, they've got the best of the best musicians backing them up, not the original people. It's a whole different world.
Yeah.
So that's how they do it. In fact, John Stamos is going to be their drummer for this summer tour. It's their 60th anniversary.
Is he really? It's funny you bring, man, that's actually really cool. Jesse and the Rippers, from Full House. That is such a generational thing. Full House was the coolest show when I was a kid. And the Beach Boys, probably because of the John Stamos tie, the Beach Boys were on Full House often. And that was always so cool. Beach Boys' first concert that I ever went to, I've probably mentioned that here before, but I was in second grade and I went to a Beach Boys concert on a school night too. And that's just
wow.
Story at the Palace of Auburn Hills. That was pretty wild. But no, the Beach Boys showing up on Full House was always so cool. And I saw they've toured. So John Stamos being their drummer, I might have to see if they're actually. I think they were in Charlotte. I think they were in Charlotte a couple weeks ago. But I'll have to see if they're coming back. That'd be fun to go to.
Yeah, that's already been announced. He's going to play drums in their Michigan show. I think they're going to be at Meadowbrook in August. I'm thinking we'll probably go see him. Just for nostalgia.
I don't understand the connection.
I guess I don't know. Did the documentary? So I don't know. I mean, John Stamos was a musician his whole life growing up, and obviously now. So maybe him and the Beach Boys were just friends. Maybe Ted, do you know?
I don't really know the story on that. It might have been just because of the whole Full House thing.
What's the Full House thing? What is that? What do you mean the Full House?
Yeah, like Full House. I mean, you know what Full House is, obviously.
It was a TV show.
You know that. The Beach Boys would just show up, and because Uncle Jesse, John Stamos, was a musician on the show, and he on the show was friends with the Beach Boys. So the Beach Boys would play themselves on the show fairly often. So it was just cool, watching the show as a kid when the Beach Boys would be on.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah,
that's the tie, and that would be my guess without knowing that's where it all started, and they needed a drummer. But one little tidbit before we wrap up that part of it, you probably didn't realize this, or maybe you heard it somewhere along the line. The Beach Boys came out in the early 60s, and they just dominated the charts in their first 3 or 4 or 5 different number one songs they had. They went to tour in Asia somewhere, and at that same time they were touring in Asia, they lost their momentum because it happened to be coinciding with 1964 and the Beatles coming to America, and the Beatles knocked them off the charts. And then it became kind of a rivalry between the Beach Boys and the Beatles for a number of years. So little music trivia for you. And that was documented in the doc.
Yeah, I might have to check that out. That's a cool story.
Is it? What did they say? There's some. I was just trying to find it real quick, and then we can tie up the Beach Boys. Weren't they basically like corporate shells, where basically they were like made by like the record label, brought them all together, basically because of funding and money behind them is why they became
No. They started out, the three Wilson brothers, their cousin Mike Love and Al Jardine, one of their best friends, had a garage group band, right? Their dad was their manager. Their dad was the crooked one. Their dad, you'll find it out in the documentary, he ended up somehow finagling publishing rights of all the Beach Boys songs. And then he ended up selling it to some corporation for like $700,000. They have no rights to their music.
Maybe that's what I was thinking of. I thought, I don't, maybe
that's the background.
Even still currently, they don't have rights to their songs.
Not publishing rights. No, they're out. That kind of nasty stuff happened to Creedence Clearwater Revival. John Fogerty lost all his money because of bad management. Sly and the
Grand Funk Railroad. Grand Funk
Railroad's a perfect example of it. Bad management stole their money, and that happened. You gotta watch out for your money, boys. That's all there is to it.
I did
it.
Got
anything?
I got the Unfrosted. We watched Unfrosted, so I've got to give my review. I told you guys I was going to watch it. I'm a Seinfeld fan. The cast is insane. I mean, people were popping up left and right every scene. I was like, oh geez, as all-star of a cast as you can get for a comedy movie. I'll say this: I fell asleep. I didn't fall asleep. I was kind of like, doing the I was dozing a couple times. It has moments that are funny. For the time machine thing to take you back to the 60s, it was perfect. It made you feel like you were back then. So all of that, it was cool. The set, obviously them talking about Battle Creek, being from Michigan is cool. It wasn't as funny as I thought. There were funny moments, but I don't think I laughed out loud at all. In fact, my wife, towards the end of the movie, she said, I don't think I've heard you laugh once. And I was like, I'm chuckling over here a couple times, so it's tough because I like all those people and the story is interesting, but it left a little bit that it could have been a little better. I don't know if the script could have been better. I don't know if it was just a bunch of people messing around making a movie. It was a little goofy. It'd be tough for me to recommend it to people. I'd be like, if you really like Seinfeld, if you really like Jim Gaffigan and some of these other people, watch it. But
that's kind of like my review, because like I said, I wasn't going to give it to Jared. No way in hell I would say recommend it to him. Right. You were kind of the fence guy, but I kind of thought you would give the review you just gave.
Yeah.
Because the reason I enjoyed it so much, it was a trip back in time. And even some of the references were kind of clever because I lived in that era. So that's the only thing I would say.
Yeah.
But I get both your points on that.
See, there's a way to do nostalgia right, like Stranger Things, the 1980s, because it's a great storyline around it, and it just happens to be in the 1980s. Mm-hmm. Then there's Unfrosted. and I still haven't seen it. Honest to God, I think this is maybe the last we'll ever talk about it. It's time to maybe set the sail on
put it away. Put it away.
But I think it's ironic. I remember thinking about how you were kind of pitching why it was such a good movie, and your reasoning was, well, 3 out of 4 out of your family members, liked it. And the more and more I thought about that, it's like, man, what a weird barometer, an echo chamber of people with all your same likes, all your same dislikes, basically bounce it off of and use that as a reason. I thought that was interesting. One thing where I'm going to go with this. So we were talking about it, and I've already hammered this Unfrosted review enough. So last thing I'll say on it is I saw on my Twitter, it's like I'm getting targeted Unfrosted stuff now that we've talked about it. I saw somebody basically tweet basically there's always been the debate, why was Seinfeld popular? Was it because of Jerry Seinfeld, or was it because of, why am I blanking
Larry
on
David?
Larry David.
And basically what they said is Unfrosted was the perfect way to show why it was always Larry David all along, for why that show worked. So again, we're not trying to, I get why you liked it. It took you back to your childhood, but I think overall, I think the opinion has been cast from the general public on what this movie was, and it was not a good movie.
Yeah, well, you probably are right on rating it as a good movie, but I enjoyed it. That's the whole point,
Exactly.
We were a serial family. It all related to the 60s where I grew up. So again, it was strictly nostalgia, and some of the one-liners were pretty funny, but I get where the negative people are coming from as well.
There were some clever one-liners, but what it did, I would love to see whether it a legit movie or a documentary on when Pop-Tarts came out, to hear I want to hear some of the post Kellogg's rivalry. I'd be curious to hear what actually happened. How did this all go down? I would be curious. So it did give me that.
Fair enough. Last time we're talking about Unfrosted. I think I'm going to get some Frosted Flakes for breakfast tomorrow, though.
There you go.
And to be honest, Pop-Tarts are overrated, man. I mean, toaster strudel, although they have some difficulties with getting the cooking right, they are the elite, pastry, breakfast pastry.
That's fair. Toaster strudel, like Hot Pockets, is the ultimate. If you cook them 2 seconds too long, that stuff in the middle is like lava, and you're gonna burn your tongue. Yeah. But the question is, so you're talking about cooking or whatever, Pop-Tarts uncooked or in the toaster? What's better, or does it depend on the flavor you're having?
I like my Pop-Tart. I really only like one. I mean, strawberry is okay, but I like the cinnamon on, what was it called?
The brown sugar cinnamon.
Brown sugar cinnamon, and I like to put a little layer of butter on it before I put it in the toaster oven.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how I like it.
Disgusting. But why? What do you get from putting butter on it? That's interesting.
Oh man,
I like butter. I like butter.
Does it? That's a real
Don't you
thing?
put butter on your
That's
toast? Do you put butter on your toast? I like butter.
Yeah, I wouldn't. That's not what I thought you were going to say. You're going to put on. I thought you were going to say ice cream or something that actually sounds. Butter, I don't think it hurts anything, but I don't get what you get out of it.
Flavor.
Interesting. I'm more of a hot fudge sundae guy. That's my favorite.
Hot fudge sundae. I've never had that. S'mores used to be my favorite, so along the same lines. But no, I like them uncooked, straight out of the package, straight out of the NASA. The NASA aluminum foil package that they put on there.
I guess I like them toasted, but I would say 99 out of 100 times I've ate Pop-Tarts. I never toast them. Right. Almost as a snack, just grab them right out of the package and eat them.
No time to toast it. All right, before we wrap this up, fellas, there was one sports story I did want to get into real quick, and it's a fascinating story, and that's the whole Birmingham Southern baseball team going to the D3 College World Series. The college is shutting its doors down in a couple days from now, and the baseball team's still going to be playing at the College World Series. And a side story on that, you guys remember back when Adam LaRoche, this was back in 2016. He was a player, I think, for the White Sox at the time, and his kid got banned from the clubhouse. Well, his kid, Drake LaRoche, is one of the pitchers on this Birmingham team. So kind of a neat little side story there. I don't know if they're going to do much in the World Series, but it's definitely one of the stories that I caught that I thought was really, really cool.
It is crazy because the school's been open for 168 years. So it's not like some school that's just been, open for a little while. That's a deep history, almost 200 years of the school being open.
Amazing.
Closing their doors, and the baseball team, that's going to be the last thing. Nothing. Kids have graduated, moved on. The only thing still going is the baseball team. And they have a chance to win the World Series. It is a cool story.
It almost makes me want to buy a Birmingham Southern T-shirt or something, kind of like the Nimrods up north. I mean, it's classic,
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, they have the opportunity if they could win this championship. I mean, I think I saw his tweets like it's a Disney movie just waiting to be made.
Right.
They just gotta figure it out and win the title, and the story's gonna blow up times 10.
Yeah. Well, I saw someone making the joke that like the school is letting out or closing when the World Series begins. So technically when they start playing, especially if they advance in the World Series,
right,
they're going to be playing for a school that doesn't exist. And they're going to be college athletes, student athletes that aren't even enrolled to a school that exists. So it's like, who are they even playing for? Like, what is this even for? It's crazy.
Yeah. Where are they going to put the trophy?
Right.
The other story that was kind of interesting on it too, is when they were getting ready to play their regional final, like 9 of the players came down with food poisoning, and a couple of them were put in the hospital even, and they ended up coming back and winning that. It's just it's a Disney movie all the way.
Yeah.
The only thing that's missing is like in the movie, it would be like the school would be on the teetering of closing, and somehow they would loop it in where if the team wins the title, they save the school. Never quite how it really works. In real life, they just shut the school down, don't even tell the students. Basically, go find education elsewhere. All your credits that you got at this little D3 school, none of them are going to transfer.
They're gone. So no transfer.
That's right. All right, guys. I think we made it through a pod. Let's wrap this up and watch a little couple quarters of basketball here. How's that sound?
Yeah.
I want to thank Memorial Healthcare's Wellness Center. Make sure you go talk to a rep, go online, see what discounts are available for memberships. They got swimming lessons. I think you got to get on the horn here real quick to get into the June schedule. So get details at memorialhealthcare.org. Our other partners include the ALS Association, AZee Branding Solutions, Jacobs Insurance Agency, Kori and Associates Real Estate Services, Nelson House Funeral Homes, Rivals Taphouse and Grille, and Success Group Mortgage and Servicing. Also want to send a shout out. The boys from Chi-Town will be playing on May 30th over in Flint at the Machine Shop. That's one of their favorite venues. They'll follow that up with a June 1st show at the Centerline Independence Festival. So go check out our boys in Chi-Town. Peace and love, everybody. Be kind. Thanks for listening again. See you next time.